So, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us. I'm Craig Monroe. I'm the founder and editor-in-chief of Elegant Literature. I'm here joined with Jordan Canty, who is the editor and content writer at Now Novel and the judge for the Behind the Veil contest in February. And we're also joined by Levi Smith, who is the winning author of the $3,000 grand prize for his story, Pop Gun. Fantastic. Levi, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, how are you feeling right now? How did you feel when you saw your name in the magazine, the contest winner?
I fought every urge to not cry. It was a big deal. I haven't won anything literary, so it was huge. I called my mom, I called my aunts and my sisters, I called everyone. So over the moon.
Great.
Fantastic.
Congrats. Yeah.
And Jordan, thank you for joining us. Thank you for agreeing to judge the contest in the first place. That was fantastic to have.
It's a pleasure. It was so great to read all the entries and be a part of this. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. So, Jordan, we're here to talk about Levi's writing, his journey as a writer, and also we want to talk about Pop Gun, like what we liked about it, obviously, because we loved it, and I'm really curious to know where it came from, because I know, Levi, you sent me an email that said that this story was pretty personal to you. So, do you want to tell us a little bit about that before I hand it over to Jordan to ask some questions I know he's got?
Absolutely. It's wildly personal to me. My family, I'm in my early 40s and my family's going through a bunch of like health stuff with people who are a little early. You know what I mean? We got some early health stuff. And we were all gathering at my sister's house, and we had the little kids and we had the grandparents, all four of them. And we had my sister not doing great and family coming in and out. And I just was like, this is it. This is what it's all about. I've got this little 5-year-old nephew who is Jack in the story. And then my dad, who's a grandpa now, is Cam in the story. In my minds, I see their faces. You know what I mean? But, I fictionalize it. We haven't had a fun adventure with ghosts and stuff in our real life. But I fictionalized a fun adventure, obviously working around that prompt. But as I started working with the theme and adding the specific item that needed to be in it, it just became so real. And it didn't necessarily write itself, but it told me where to go. I didn't know there was going to be a ghost grandpa originally. Like when he shoots the picture off the wall, that went through so many iterations of what it could be. It was like a jar on a counter. It was an urn. It was a vase. It was all these things. It was a key. They were looking for a safe deposit. So it was this fun adventure. And then when it finally turned into what it turned into, it just resonated with me. And like I said, I couldn't read it out loud. My mom wanted me to read it to her. My dad wanted me to read it to her. And I'd have to have other people read the story to them because I just couldn't do it without choking up. So wildly meaningful to me. And it all stems from your prompt. So thank you so flippin' much.
Well, thank you for that. And thank you, Jordan, for choosing Behind the Veil, because that was your call there. So
nice.
It really elicited such evocative responses. But one thing I liked about your story, Levi, was that it was quite original in how it interpreted the prompt. But also what you're saying, it came through that this came from a kind of deep well of lived experience. I actually thought, reading it, I thought this is a mature kind of writer's voice, because it's got that sense of lived experience, that going through both sides of being the kid, being older, seeing from all the different sides of those experiences of growing older and growing up. So that really came through for me, that there was an authenticity to the voice that I think often writers, when you read submissions to these things, they're trying very hard to be clever with the prompt. I'm not saying this was the case for any of the shortlist. There were great stories around. But often there's a thing of writers trying hard, and it felt effortless, even though when you're saying now about the picture on the wall and shooting it down, and how there are all these different options of how it could have gone, it felt as though the story, it felt effortless, which I know as an editor takes a lot of work to get to that place where a story, where a story feels effortless. So that really came through. So something I wanted to ask you I was making some notes before this because I'm not always so good at off the cuff, but one of the things that drew
Who
me
is?
to it. Sorry? All right, yeah.
Who's
Well,
good at
So,
off
so
the cuff? Come on.
yeah, totally.
I've done these interview conversations. Like this is, I think, it's the 17th one I've done, and I've still got like a pile of notes here that I mess them
Right.
all up every time. As
I like to be prepared. I think it's the editor in
Yeah.
me. But so one of the things that drew me to it though was how you explore storytelling as a kind of intergenerational tradition handed down through listening to elders as a kid and seeing the same stories from new angles as you grow older. That sense of the kind of, it's going to maybe sound corny, but the circle of life or the cycle of life and the cycles of life. And hearing what you said earlier about the family stuff and the untimely kind of health stuff you guys were all going through, it makes sense as well that this came through in the story. It's interesting to hear the backstory of it, but yeah, I loved how it played with time, almost making it like an elastic band, how it kind of stretches and contracts. Like you're in the moment with this kid, and then it's like this like vertigo of cycling through these older and younger perspectives. And I was just wondering about these themes. Can you talk? Well, I was going to ask you to talk a bit about the themes of death and growing up and older and what drew you to talking about them. But I think you've pretty much answered that in a way. But that leads me to, I suppose I could ask about your writing inspirations generally. You said you're a comedian, a stand-up comic.
Hmm.
Are there favorite authors or favorite comics who inspire you
Sure,
and who are
absolutely.
they?
Yeah. One of my favorite authors is Stephen King.
Right.
He's maybe who I read the most prolifically. Second is Garrison Keillor. I don't know
Right.
if you guys know Garrison Keillor, but I'm a
Yeah.
diehard fan. You
I
know,
don't, but it
Awesome.
goes in my notes.
cool. Yeah. Oh, he's amazing. Prairie Home Companion. Yeah, check that out.
Yeah.
It's very old people stuff, but it's just his writing. Talk about writing simply with no flourish and using simple words to describe stuff. It's just he's
Right.
just amazing that way. And then my favorite comedian is Norm Macdonald.
Yeah.
R.I.P.
Classic.
Yeah.
Yeah, those kind of old, those roast masters. I love watching those Comedy Central roast battles and like, the old classics like Cloris Leachman and the old kind of sitcom stars. They could
Sure.
roast like no other, and their humor is great.
Did you ever
So
watch Norm Macdonald's One Roast? He's only
I
on one
actually haven't,
roast. Have you ever seen it?
I haven't seen Norms. I'm gonna have to look that up too. That's gonna go in
Oh,
my
it's
notes as well.
amazing because he just uses these old joke book joke roast jokes. So it's like
Right.
super antiquated, and everyone's just looking at each other like, "What is he doing?" And it
Like an
gets
anti,
it's hilarious. So please
like a
check
kind of
that out.
anti joke, like a dad joke
Almost
kind of stuff.
totally, exactly.
Right.
How long have
Sounds
you
cool.
been a comedian for?
Yeah.
It's been about 7 years.
7 years. What
Awesome.
made you start?
I'm a young comedian. I had a house fire and I lost every worldly possession, and I was at a very low point, and
Oh
I
my
was at an
goodness.
open mic, so I started talking about it, and I was like, I really like this.
That
It's a
doesn't
great
sa-
catharsis.
that doesn't sound like it would have been a comedy improv at the open mic. Start talking about the house fire.
That's right. I was like, my house burned down, and there's one thing I didn't lose. Insert punchline here. I'll keep it clean on your Zoom call.
Yeah, right. I guess, I mean, by the way, I do some light editing on this, so we can say whatever we
Okay.
want.
Okay.
You can swear if you want. It's not like
Okay.
it
Great.
has to
Great.
be
Great.
super. I mean, let's not make it like a sailor's every second word.
It's just
'Cause,
beep 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 beep. Some
yeah,
Morse code. Yeah.
but please feel free to be natural yourself.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Especially as a comedian, I can't imagine a comedian who doesn't swear or go down the dirty
Right.
side sometimes.
Be a bit
We've
blue
got them.
sometimes.
Awesome. Has being a comedian influenced your fiction writing at all in any way?
100%. Yeah. I'm always looking for, I'm looking for the mechanical jokes as I write. Like, I think comedy, horror. So before I got into writing fiction seriously, I was writing comedy and horror, and I just saw the juxtaposition of putting them both into stuff. And I know a ghost story isn't exactly horror, and and then also the comedy in like Pop Gun that you guys read is, you know, wry at the best, right? It's just kind of sarcastic. It's not a set up punchline or really clear jokes, but there's a lot of you know, snarkiness, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, it's more subtle. Like it's more almost the actions of like you when you're because I see stories as movies in my mind. So as I'm watching this kid like creep down the hall and like hunt his sister down as an outlaw, right? Like there's things about that yeah, I just see it. I'm like that's cute and funny in a non like it's not like a punchline funny way, but it is funny situation.
Right.
I'd be laughing if I saw that in real life.
It's a really interesting take because it's got that kind of cosmic humor of recognition, of recognizing the kind of true, this is how kids are, this is how parents are. Like the way the kids are kind of, the parents at least, are kind of distracted when Cal tries to talk to them, and it's the kind of, that's nice, honey kind of response. It's those kind of, those moments of recognition of like, hey, that's so true. That's part of that is in comedy, but also what I like as well in that is with comedy, the setup and punchline kind of structure has filtered into the writing, not necessarily in the sense of like there are jokes with the setup and punchline, but that kind of oscillating between the expected and the unexpected, like the
surprise,
real and the unreal of he shoots the pop gun and it's like, so he shot her, and then it's like the cork is dangling at the end of the gun. It's that veering between the expected and unexpected that a comic has or has to have in their kind of set, I think filters through into even so-called inverted commas serious writing. I mean, I wouldn't divide writing into serious, unserious. I think it's all play and it's all serious. Okay, it's serious and whatever. But you know, it's interesting how those devices of comedy, those structural devices, filter through into the writing itself, and I think that's part of one of its strengths. One of the things and that's one of the things is I didn't read it as I actually found it quite a moving story. I didn't read it as a humor piece, but what it had was that sense of play that you sometimes miss when a writer's voice isn't developed, maybe yet, is that sometimes people forget to play with language, with the unexpected and the expected. You know, with all those devices of fiction that make it such a pleasure, it's like the playfulness that is there in comedy is there even in a serious piece of writing, I think. Or serious, by serious I mean like maybe tragic or, you know, moving or whatever.
Not like so you took it seriously.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I guess I take writing itself seriously. I mean, I'm passionate about storytelling, but it's a very interesting thing that comedic kind of aspect is there beneath even the serious moments. In other words, so something I wanted to ask you was about process, because I talk about process a lot over at our novel as well. So what is yours like? Like, do you do much outlining or pre-writing, or are you more the shoot from the hip kind of pantser? And also
I do both. I do both.
Okay.
Pop Gun was from the seat of my pants until it got
Jared, you missed a great chance. Instead of saying shoot from the pants, you could have said shoot from the hip.
What was I thinking? Missed opportunities all over the place. But then it was from the hip to a certain point, and then when it got to that ending, when I added the little reveal, that took quite a bit of work to make it clear that Cal became a grandfather. That actually went through. I must have rewritten that 8-10 times because it just wasn't clear. I was changing first person to close third and all this, and it just wasn't clear when it made that transition. Once I put it all into first person, I was like, oh, okay. It was a big revelation. And then, and then it found its legs. So that happened at the end, like the reveal it's not really a reveal, but the time compression, as you put it, where he turns into a grandpa himself. That just happened because I was like, hey, I think there's a few more things to say about this when I got to the end.
Right.
No, is that how you normally write stories? Because you've written quite a number of stories for Elegant Literature now, haven't you?
Oh yeah. I try to submit 4 to you guys a month. I've been coming up short lately.
Whoa, that's a lot.
It's a lot.
You said in your email you've written something like over 30,000 words or something just for our prompts. Was that?
And that's just like what I like, and that's just for your prompts. I've probably written more like 60,000 words, and at least half of it was just garbage, you know. So
That's fantastic.
I'm pretty good at killing my babies, as they say. I'm pretty good at being like, no, that's garbage, get rid of it.
That's good. And
That's
so,
that's interesting.
do you approach most of your work like you approached Pop Gun, or was this a bit different because it was more personal to your life? Or
Exactly right. It was way more personal, and it just kind of came out, right? There were some mechanisms I had to work out, but as far as like, I knew what the structure was mostly. But like, I've written, I'm on my third novel right now, and those can go depending on what's happening, like how complicated the story is, because they're mysteries. They're YA mysteries. Some of them will just come out of me, and then I'll have to sprinkle in some facts to make it make sense. Some of them will come with I'll do an outline first, and then I'll follow that kind of loosely, and allow myself to be able to throw away part of the outline if it's not working with something I really like in advance. But so I'm both things. I'll heavily outline something and ditch parts of it or stick to parts of it. I'll also just sit down, not know where I'm going, and just start typing. Both things happen for me, which I'd imagine is both authors, or is most authors, don't you think? They're kind of a little of everything.
yeah, well, even like I'm a big proponent of outlining, because I think that, especially for new writers, outlining to a story structure is going to help you grasp story structure and write more tighter stories faster. And once you've done that 2 or 3 times, like if you outline pretty intensely for 3 novels, you'll have a much better chance of writing a coherent, structured novel without outlining by pantsing it, because you're more familiar with how structure works and flows. But that, even though I'm a big proponent for outlining and I like to outline all my stuff, there's still times when I just like get a flash. It's like, there's no time to outline. You just have to sit down and just start writing.
We've got to catch this. I got to capture this.
I've got it. Like, and then you look at it and you go, wow, this was terrible. I should have outlined.
I know that. I know that really well.
That's one of the hazards, is having plot holes and issues that you later spend a lot of time going back to fix. So that is one of the benefits. I think it depends a lot on the writer. I mean, I work with many writers who are complete pantsers and many writers who are methodical plotters, and some go between the two depending on the project. I think one of the things a lot of planning can do is stifle the kind of spontaneity a little bit. So what I like to suggest to people sometimes is some kind of pantsers compromise, where you maybe plan in just action and reaction beats, like 1 ahead or 2 ahead or however many ahead you, just to see the tail lights of what's coming next ahead of you, so that there's still just a little bit of that spontaneity in there and that freedom. Absolutely. I think a lot of writers struggle to not have the freedom. I know for myself, writing, I feel a kind of paranoia and fear as I see the doors closing of the different ways the thing could go, the choices you make, how they kind of shut off the other possible avenues. That is something that is kind of frustrating sometimes, is seeing those many possibilities reduced down. So I think pantsing has a benefit there, where you don't have to necessarily give up on all your possibilities up front and see where it takes you. So yeah.
Like with Pop Gun, I could have never outlined that because I didn't know what it was. It kind of just showed up to me. But after, I had done just let it pour out of me, there were a bunch of details I had to go back and, like I was talking about how it wasn't originally a picture, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm. And had I stuck to a jar or a vase, I wouldn't have the line in that story, and he nailed old Eloise right between the eyes, which is maybe one of my favorite lines in that whole story. And I wouldn't have had that, right, if I had stuck to an outline where it had to be a jar with a key or something like that. So I see the power in outlining, kind of knowing where you're going, a little bit of a roadmap. But at the same time, I like outlining. I know I'm repeating myself, but I love outlining and then going, nope, done. We're not going that direction anymore.
Yeah.
And if everything falls apart, you still have that outline. Sorry.
Yeah, just to go back to 2 things you said, though, because one of the things was the comedy link, is that I think comedy teaches one that discipline of writing a whole lot of material and then saying, okay, this is crap, being brutal, killing your darlings, I think comedy really teaches you that skill, which is very important. But I also like what you said about it might have just come out of nowhere in inverted commas, but you still went back and did the work. And I think that's also another
Right.
thing, is recognizing when to go back and do the work. And also that the stories that write themselves. I think there was an interview, I think it was with Charlie Rose or someone where David Lynch, who I'm a huge fan of, I really enjoy his weird kind of non-linear storytelling.
Very
Twin Peaks
cool.
is probably my favorite show of all time. I'm a little bit obsessed with it. But he said he compares like ideas to, he says like the big fish is that one that like, it's a story that like doesn't let you go. Like you're not chasing off the story. The story is like, hey, I'm going to write myself, whether you were planning to write me or not, you know, kind of thing. The one that gets you up in
Totally.
the middle of the night,
Totally.
kind of. Yeah, and this sounds like that kind of story. And he says like, you know, he calls those the big fish, and he's like, you got to catch those ones. You got to reel them in and pay attention when they show up, because it's like they're ephemeral and they just come out of nowhere. It's those flashes of inspiration. It's very interesting. It's very, but it's also interesting how it also connects so much to what a writer's going through at that time. Often, like it's those ones where you where you are fearless to be honest and to tap into very real, raw, personal stuff. I think is often where great stuff comes from, and it's not stuff that you necessarily just. It doesn't just, you don't word vomit on the page. You still have to go back and do the work. So tying all those things together, I think that's also the comedian's discipline is in that, is in saying, hey, I've got to be spontaneous and funny and whatever and spew out the stuff. But at the end of the day, someone's got to be entertained or laugh. So yeah, it's interesting.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I would say out of
Yeah.
every 25 jokes I write, I find one that works. So talk about, something that relates great to approaching fiction. It's like if you can write 10,000 words and call a
Right.
thousand of them okay, like you're doing a lot of practice. And out of those 10,000, that thousand is
Yeah.
probably pretty good then, if you're willing to kill
Exactly. Yeah.
9,000 other words. So yeah, I couldn't relate more to that.
That's actually a really great piece of advice as well, is that you have to produce a lot to get something good, because I think what I find a lot among beginning writers is they don't know what they don't know yet about process. That it's like some people can write 20
Right.
drafts. You're like, oh God, I'm on my third draft. And you're thinking, some people write 20, 30 drafts. It's like it
Totally.
really sometimes takes that much to get something that is coherent or has impact or something. So I think
Yeah,
a lot
and
of people
also
slowly come to.
it goes with like the volume of work too, not just with drafts, but just with story after story. Because I always recommend always try like make what you're working on the best that you can, and if it's really important to
Mhm.
you, obviously throw this advice out. But you make what you can, what you're working on the best that you can, and then you move on to the next piece because that's going to teach you more than endlessly revising the same one. So, for example, a lot of new writers will, they'll especially with elegant literature, right? Because we're for a lot of sometimes very brand new people, and sometimes people who are a bit more experienced, right? Like Levi, you said you've kind of drafted a few novels now, and you've been penning,
Yeah.
like you've been aiming for 4 stories a month with elegant literature, right? And so with that kind of volume, you're going to be looking at a better chance of success because over 3 to 6 months, you're writing like 20 to 30 stories and learning from each one and experimenting. Whereas
Yeah.
somebody who kind of like wrote one every 2 months and then is frustrated that they're not getting seeing their name in print, but because they're not maybe improving and if they've only written 3 stories in their life and they're just really hoping that this one because it means something to them. But you gotta put in the volume to get the practice in to start learning and seeing the patterns. I mean, that's
I
what I
couldn't
do.
agree more with that. I couldn't
I
agree more.
agree.
And to be fair, that advice, and I talk about this a lot, is good if writing is a career goal. Like if you want to eventually make money off that, you
Right.
should think about it like that. If you're writing to make yourself happy and you just enjoy the process and it's about getting the story down, you don't have to think about writing volumes to get better. You just write for pleasure. That's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with either way. It's just I think that if you're aiming to get published, you're aiming to win awards and see your novels in print and maybe support yourself. I don't know. The best thing you can do is just produce as many things as you can to get a broad range of experience and practice under your belt.
Couldn't
That's
agree
very
more.
true.
Work, 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 right? That's how you exercise those muscles. That's how like I've gone back since I've been writing for you guys, which again, I can't express how much I love your magazine. So but as I've been working with you guys, I go back and I read some of my old stuff and I'm like, oh, this is garbage, which is great. That's a best case scenario, right? That means I'm
Yeah.
strengthening those muscles.
Okay.
Exactly. That's like a point.
Okay.
That's actually, I think, a point that I make in one of my very first emails when you sign up to Elegant Literature. I've got a long email that kind of explains my philosophy.
Your emails are great.
And thanks. And yeah, it's like the point. If your goal is to just tell stories for a living, potentially, or just continue to get better, then the first one that you write, the first story or the first novel, is never going to be the best. And when you look back on it, just like you said, it's going to be like, oh man, that's no good. And
Oof.
so but that's great, because it means that you're progressing and you're improving and you're getting better. And so your goal should actually be to not really like these early works that you're working on right now. And so this is
shouldn't
one of
like any of it.
Yeah. And unless it's a story that really means something to you, like Pop
That
Gun,
resonates.
if it's just you're writing one of the other three that you're just trying to submit for the month for practice, it helps to be able to think of it that way, to let go of the pressure to be perfect and make the story, like, keep revising it to make it the best it can be, because 30 stories from now you're gonna hate it, and that's the goal. So don't stress too much about making it perfect right now.
It's also a perfect analogy for comedy. Sorry, Jordan.
No, absolutely. I was just going to say, I think writing process is an interesting thing, because it's, on the one hand, it's the discipline, right, to keep producing and to show up and to do the work. But on the other hand, it's that looseness of not being precious about it and being like, I can kill this darling. I can let this one go. I can cut these 9,000 lines to get the 1,000 good. It's this funny mix between a kind of looseness and a discipline that again goes back to what comedy is, this mix of things. It's very interesting how many aspects of comedy and joke structure and all these things, it all ties into writing generally. I mean, obviously it is writing, it's storytelling, but it's amazing how it condenses these kind of concepts. But
it's communicating ideas as well, you know?
Yeah, communicating ideas, but finding novel ways to do it. So I think maybe also writers should try tell a few more jokes. It's also such a relief when I find a voice. There's such a relief or a sense of gratitude when I find a voice where someone is using humor, because so many more writers go, I feel, for the melodramatic and the dark or the Sturm und Drang, because they think this is what it means to be a serious writer. A comedian can be terribly serious and can move you and so on and so forth. Like, I really think the way that serious writing has been associated with the tragic or the bleak, or, the Nobel, for example, is so often awarded writers who really get very political or very bleak, as opposed to, again, then they gave Bob Dylan, the Nobel to even it out. But this idea of, like, you have to be bleak, you have to be miserable, or you have to suffer for art, or your art has to be a representation of suffering. I think there's a lot of suffering that goes on in comedy as well. And that's, so there's this kind of, I think it's just really interesting how comedy comes through in the story, but it's really quite a moving story. And I keep going back to that because it's really blowing my mind in some funny way. But it's interesting. It's always what's so fascinating to me about meeting the writer, because obviously I judge these stories blind, and judge is a weird word to me because every story is so different. But evaluated, I should say. But what's so fascinating always is to put the person and the voice and the face and the story to the writing. Because, to read something without all that context, you read things a certain way, but then
you didn't even have more makes sense names or anything.
Exactly, but
more
makes sense when you meet the person. Yeah.
Like absolutely. All things, I have. I think I was just talking to somebody about this the other day. Is that because I read all the stories blind, I never know who wrote them until after the winner's been selected or after the shortlist has been passed off to the judge or whatever. But over time, I often start to feel like I'm getting a sense for some people's style. If I've published them once or twice before, and I've or they're one of my former students who's I can see starting to kind of improve over time, I start to feel like I'll read the story blind. I'll be like, I think this might be, this sounds like it might be their kind of voice, because they're starting to develop a voice, and I almost invariably I'm incorrect.
Never nail it.
Almost every time I am just wrong. I was like, one of them, I was like, I feel like I know who wrote this. Obviously, I can't be sure, so it doesn't change my evaluation of it or potential. But then I review it and it's not even the person. I was like, yeah, this is it's so cool how people have developed styles, and then other people can kind of almost share a voice, but it's in particular to the story, right? Like I think we published your story in the last issue with all the glitters. Was it Fool's Gold, called something like that?
It's called The Old Timer.
The Old Timer, that's right. And he it was, yeah, and which
And
is
the theme was Fool's Gold, pretty much. Yeah, exactly right though.
And that story, despite being about cowboys as well, bore almost no resemblance to
That's right.
Gun in any way. Jordan, I don't know if you happen to read that issue. It was a story about well, it was an old timer digging for gold in kind of the old west, and in a cave, and three guys came to rob him, and then there was a monster in the cave that kind of ate them all, and he was like he.
That sounds great. I'm gonna have to go back and read it. I haven't read that one yet. It makes me think of Twain. Twain wrote that comic work about going west as well, full of comedy and the outlandish kind of scenarios, just the way you described it. It's interesting that also you've been published in previous issues, because I mean that kind of experience really showed through in the story, in the writing. I really actually thought you might be quite a lot older as a writer. I thought you might be, maybe in your 60s. There was a sense of experience, and I think that comes from all the practice you've been doing. That, I mean, I've got to stop and say kudos for that, because I think it's very easy to get perfectionist about stuff and be your own worst enemy and block yourself because you're trying to be perfect. But I think to let go of that fear and just embrace it and produce, it's great to be able to develop that habit and that ability to not be precious, I suppose, about it, to be like, you know what, I'm going to shoot from the hip, and that I'm going to submit this and move on to the next thing, kind of thing. I think it's great to be able to do that. It only benefits your craft.
To be clear, I do all the bad stuff as well. I do get precious about cutting something, and I get lazy. I do all the bad stuff too, but I'm trying to work as hard as I possibly can on this craft.
And do the stories, because you're submitting. You're aiming for 4 a month for Elegant Literature. You said that you weren't quite hitting that recently, but I'm wondering, because how similar are your stories? Are you trying to write in a very broad variety of styles? Like, are you specifically submitting 2 to 3 pieces that are distinctly different from each other?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So if I wrote a Western, they're off the table now, and I got to do a mystery or something. If I write a sci-fi, I've got to do now a pure comedy or something. I don't want, because I want to flex, because genres are so different and you can approach them all so differently, that I want to flex those muscles of what each thing looks like. I don't want to just write tear jerkers, and I also don't want to just write fantasy. So I want to have muscles in all of the things, all the genres I can.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. And especially, how long have you been writing fiction for? Because I mean, I wanted to get to this. You said you've drafted a couple novels now. You've been submitting to Elegant Literature for a little while. Are we the first place that you've been published?
You're my first place. You're the first place I went. Yeah, I've been writing for just a little over 2 years. Seriously.
And you finished a couple novels.
Yeah, the first novel was 3.5 months of coming home after work. Sorry about that. 3.5 months of coming home after work and writing until it was past my bedtime, going to sleep, going to work, coming home, and doing that cycle. My girlfriend didn't see me for almost 4 months. I was just sitting in the garage at a dilapidated desk, and this story had to come out. And that was my first novel. And it's about 53,000 words. So it can use a little beefing up maybe. But once that came out of me, I was like, okay, what do I want to do? I want to get this published. And I didn't. I sat for a little while. I came back, I read it, and it stirred the second book up in me. And it's a YA. It's a YA about a 12-year-old girl detective who doesn't want to be. And then I wrote all these short stories to go around it. And then I was like, okay, I don't have any writing credits. I don't have a degree. What does a guy like me do? And the editor, I invested money into my draft of my first novel. I hired a professional editor, and she kind of guided me into, well, you can start building credits and da-da-da. And that's when I went and looked, and your magazine was just so appealing. It looked so pretty. It seemed so accessible. I was like, this is where I'm going to start. This is perfect. And then the arc of working with you has been amazing. To go from the first one to get an honorable mention to making it into the publication to winning, I can't even describe. I'm trying not to choke up right now how much that means to me.
Well, I'm sure glad that you found us and that you decided to submit to us, because it led us here. I mean, your story is fantastic. We love it, and it's great to meet somebody who clearly has like the passion and the drive and is looking to do something with this. Is this a career that you want to make? Like, would you like, because do you do comedy for a living? What do you do for a living? How do you make money?
I'm doing, it's a good question. There's not a lot of money in it. Yeah, I do.
You got two great hobbies here that are awesome, and neither of them pay bills.
Don't pay anything. No, I make a modest income producing and performing. So I also produce a bunch of shows in my hometown, Santa Rosa, Sonoma County, Northern California. We kind of run our town, and we're doing something at least one day a week, if not 2 to 3. So there is money to be made. I'm not totally supporting, but supporting myself with it. So I'd like to sell a book. I'd like to write a second book, because that book's being processed, have that be, at least some kind of income for me, because I love doing it so much, and continue to do comedy. If I could round out my life like that, oh my gosh, would I be living a dream or what? Yeah. I come from home theater and home networking background.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Gotcha.
That's the boring side.
And so, so you've been writing for 2 years, and I think that you came at it with the right approach. Because especially finishing your first novel, get an editor, like you do what you can on it, but usually you're still at the phase where you don't know what you don't know. So getting a professional to kind of walk you through, and hopefully, like, actually you can, if you were able to look over their shoulder at all to kind of try and absorb some of the lessons, that can be super valuable on your first time.
Absolutely.
And then you moved on to practicing in a variety of styles, using like a multitude of shorts to hone your skills. How do you feel going back and reading that first novel now, 2 years later, as you've written all these short stories and another book or two?
It's a little brutal, as far as the prose, just as far as the sentence structure and word choice and stuff is a little brutal sometimes. In only 2 years too, so I see that as nothing but a good thing. But the story is so great that I'm still 100% in love with that first book, and I can't wait to start querying it. And I've got my query letter ready. I've got the blurb ready. I've got a synopsis almost there. And I'm going to go back for a 4th revision, because the opening 10 pages of the book are a slow burn. And so I know just from this, what writing short stories have taught me is let's go. Get them interested. Keep them hooked. Let's go, because I want that. I want to be hooked. So yeah. And that goes for quite a lot of things. Like I was just watching a show with my brother on Netflix. He said this show is great, and I watched the first 2.5 episodes, and I turned it off. It was so slow. They had a cool scene as a hook at the very beginning, and they spent 2.5 episodes in like the small town village family life. And I was like, this is just taking way too long. I don't have time for this. I barely watch TV. Like I don't have time to sit through this long intro. That was a couple months ago, and he just came to visit, and he sat down. He said, we should watch something. What about this show? I said, man, no, it was too slow. And he said, oh man, it gets so good. Like it's 2.5, after 2.5 episodes, it really picks up. I said, all right, fine. We'll give it another try, but we'll start where we left off. Literally in the middle of an episode, we turn it on, and within 30 seconds, the action started, and it's been great for like the next 3 episodes. But they didn't hook me, and so you just like you say, if those first 10 pages are such a slow burn, you're gonna be losing impatient people like me who are like, I don't have time for this. I need stories that catch me. You can't just take people's word that it's gonna get better once I invest 10 hours of my life into it. It's like you're working. Right.
I don't know what either of you just said.
Sorry.
You first, Jordan.
No, sorry. I was just saying that often writers find their feet as they go. I think of a lot of my favorite comedy shows, like Arrested Development. Season 1 was kind of crap. It ended up being brilliant. Parks and Rec season 1 I didn't enjoy very much, but it was absolutely hilarious from season 2. You know, a lot of shows take time to find their feet. I think it's also the writers. You probably have a room of writers learning to find their synchronicity too, because it's not just one person running the
Absolutely.
show.
And like it's that kind of like the sitcom and the comedy shows like that, like you say, because they've got an idea, but they're not sure exactly. They're kind of almost experimenting a little bit
Yeah,
with the
finding their
Right.
feet.
different styles. And then after that,
Right.
they can see the real-time reviews from their audience, from the watchers saying, oh, I didn't like
Right.
this, I did like that, and they refine it for the season 2, and then it picks up and then you've got the audience that likes what you're writing,
Right.
and they'll stick with it as you get better and better. And then around season 7, it always tanks. Right? They run out of ideas.
It's kind of like the
That sounds
the
right.
rating system. It's like the rating system. I suppose it's a bit like with short stories. That's kind of like fiction's equivalent of the rating system, because you can test stuff out, see what hits. A lot of great novels, like, well, I was saying great novels, but I don't particularly enjoy Portrait of the Artist myself, whether or not it's a modernist classic. But Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man by Joyce started out as a short story, Stephen Hero. You know, there are lots
Oh,
of novels that are now, you know, world famous or whatever. Novels started out as short stories because it's like a testing ground. So I'm very passionate about the form myself. I think it's so great how it compresses so much into such short space. So this process was a real treat for me. It really indulged my short story loving self. So it was great.
nice.
Yeah.
That's really
Yeah.
interesting to
My late.
hear. It's really
Sorry.
interesting to hear you say, Jordan, because I know a lot of people don't like they want to write novels, right? Like they're writing short stories to
Yeah.
try and
And
get
read
some
them.
practice in, to get credits to their name, to put on
Yeah.
their cover letters and things like that. But their goal, nobody wants to write short stories for a living, right? Like most people don't have that goal, although I'm sure there's some. But it's interesting to hear you say just how much you love and appreciate the medium, just for what it is, because it is great. Like I've always been a novel guy. Like I consume novels, like 5, 6 novels a month. And I've
Wow.
pretty much kept that up on top of reading all these short stories when I started Elegant
Wow.
Literature. But I really developed a big appreciation for the short story as well. Like I always liked them, but now I can really see some of the value in it, and I can really, especially watching so many new authors, kind of like seeing them level up in almost real time over the months, and in great part due to writing short story after short story after short story, because it's short enough to finish and feel good about that and
Right.
go on to the next one and apply what you learned and get the feedback, and then apply it.
I,
It's
I,
great.
I think I think for me, with the form, what it is that, I mean, one of your countrywomen, Alice Munro, is one of my favorite authors. I just love that she compresses so much character and so much depth and layers and stuff into such a short space. So her short stories feel like novels. She achieves a kind of arc, a change arc in a short story that many authors struggle to achieve in novels. But I think part of my own passion for the shorter form is I come from a family of poets. A lot of my dad
Mm.
and uncle both had poetry published. I wrote a bunch of poetry in my student years. I've been doing way more editing than writing myself, which needs to change. But I think you can do both. But I think that's also where that comes from, is that I think it's always impressed me how poets and short story writers can condense so much into a small space. I think it's quite a challenge, but it's also like there's something quite kind of it's like just a bite-sized something that you can enjoy, and then it's ephemeral and it's gone. I quite like that. I feel like a novel can become this kind of stuffy tome that people kind of bow and praise. I quite like the unassummingness of short stories. I kind of like, yeah, it's like a kind of a humble form that is often doesn't get its due. But I
And
mean,
you can
there's some
often
incredible short stories.
remember them better. Like they'll stick with you sometimes more, because a novel,
Absolutely.
it's you like I can some of these great, like I read a lot of fantasy epics, and so I can remember them, and I can remember the epicness of them, and I can remember that I really liked the story and some key highlights. But there's a lot of the minutia detail that's lost in my memory because we're just not a filing system. Like I just lose a
Yeah.
lot of that. But with the short story, the ones that are really memorable, the ones that make an impact on you emotionally and that you keep thinking about for days, weeks, and months and years afterwards, you can often recall the whole story pretty much because it's so
Mm.
short. And there's definitely something to be said about that.
Absolutely.
I might not
On
be
that
sure what
note,
it is, but
there's an Alice Munro story called Runaway that involves a slightly unhappy couple and a runaway goat. That's just great. Her story Runaway. Another story called Dimensions that's really harrowing and kind of haunting that I think is on the New Yorker. It's available free to read. But yeah, those are two stories I always say to people. These are great models of just how you can do a lot of development of character in a very short space of time.
yeah.
Because people struggle sometimes to create those change arcs, and yeah, that's a great place to practice it as well, is to practice taking someone on a journey, which is also what Pop, to go back to your story, Levi, is what Popgun did, and why what I was doing as I was using my rubric to kind of read everyone's stories was I would steal some points from one story in one category of my rubric to give another, because there were favorites. I decided, okay, this is already like I'm comparing everything else now to this. Well, not comparing, but like looking at these categories in the rubric and being like, okay, no, if I'm saying this story has X number of points in this category, then that story deserves more, or whatever the case may be. So I kept on finding
Right.
ways to kind of give a few more points to your story, and that's when I knew. I was like, okay, this is obviously got to be the one.
It's
And I
like
was like borrowing here.
you knew emotionally that you had already decided the winner, but you needed to rationalize it for yourself on paper, justify
It
it.
wasn't even that. It was more like I was comparing. So I was comparing because I'm not used to reading that way as an editor. I'm always working on one thing at a time. I might have analog other
Mm,
stories or ideas that it evokes that I refer to in my mind, but it's like I'm not saying, okay, this story versus that's. It's a weird kind of like SmackDown kind of last one standing kind of process. It's very strange to me as an editor because I love to approach every story on its own merits and not do any kind of like comparative stuff. So it was quite unnatural to me as an editor, which is maybe why I approached it that way as well. But it wasn't so much that I'd emotionally decided. It was just like I was like, okay, no, but am I saying this story has the same whatever as this one? So it became a thing of a kind of like, yeah, I suppose I had emotionally decided. It wasn't really a decision. I didn't want to. I purposely didn't decide till I got to the end because I thought that would be churlish and unfair to all the other
Well, of
submissions. You know what I
course.
mean? So it was more like but it was like a recalibration you do as you go through all these stories of like, okay, what does the ranking look like now? It was a really I've actually never judged a kind of contest like this. We've done smaller, short flash fiction ones in our novel, but never we haven't run any kind of short story contests. So my
And
work
you
as an
also
editor is not
feel,
really as a judge.
yeah,
It's
you end
also
up
okay.
feeling
How
a
do I
little bit
make
of
this
pressure
better?
too,
So,
because you want to make
yeah,
sure that you're fair and that you're doing it justice, and
totally.
that you don't want to
Yeah,
pick the wrong one. Even that's not really possible, but it's
yeah.
still, you still feel that way, and you want to make sure, you want to feel like you're making the right choice. And
Yeah,
like a
ethical
lot of, and
choice.
it's
Yeah,
hard because it's art, right? And so, and it's
yeah.
open to subjective experience and perception.
Mm.
So we want, as a judge, we really want it to be clear cut, and like I can unequivocally say that this one deserves to be the winner because it is the best. But that doesn't.
Yeah.
That's not how it works. And then
It's so
struggling.
subjective. It is subjective. Yeah, it
You're
is totally
struggling
subjective.
between the few of them and being like, oh God, what do I do? And it can be hard, but it is rewarding to do as a judge. I'm sure, just as it's rewarding to be the one selected.
Absolutely. It is subjective to a point, and I think the thing is also as a judge, and I try and bring this to to editing as well, is not to say, okay, what do I want a story to be, but what is the story trying to do? Does it do it well? Where could it do it better? And in the case of Popgun, I was like, well, there isn't a lot I would ask for the story to do better or to change. Like, there wasn't anything I could really say, hey, I would change this, really, as an editor. And that's always a sign that something's already in a pretty polished, effective, and kind of satisfying shape. So I think as an editor, yeah, it's for me, it's definitely a process always of how can I make this the best version of itself, not like what do I need this story to be, or what does my ego say about the story. It's like what is this, not even what is this author trying to do, but like the author might hate what I suggest, but it's in the story's best interest, to try and be
right,
objective
right.
about it. Like it's very hard to kind of try and reach that mindset because then sometimes you do second guess and you think, hey, maybe I'm imposing too much of, and that's also
Yeah,
it's good
like
for an editor to be aware of those processes. And when you're like, okay, this is my this is my preference, but it might not actually be as objective as I'd like to be right now. So you really have to be ruthless also with yourself and keeping your own ego or your own preferences or your own whatever in check, so that you're always serving the story. And I think as an author, you have to try and strive for that too, for
Yeah.
that sense of
And I
commitment
found I
to
have to do
serving the
that.
story.
I have to do that as when I read all the submissions, because my whole life I've preferred fantasy above all. I love fantasy, and then science fiction,
Yeah,
horror, kind of there. And like contemporary and literary fiction has never been kind of big on my list. But as I have made the decision to open up the magazine to all genres, I have to be fair to all genres. Like I have to acknowledge my personal biases about what
right,
kind of story I like, and not
right,
put that on the stories, because that's just not fair to the authors submitting stories that aren't the genre
right.
that I tend to prefer. And um, having tried to like watch myself for that and change my perception, I've actually found that I very much enjoy a lot of sort of
Nice.
contemporary
Right.
and
It broadens
non-genre
your yeah.
and fiction. And we've published tons of it in Elegant Literature, and it's I think it's tied with fantasy and science fiction for stories published in the magazine over
That's
all
great.
issues. Um, I like to keep track of that. So I'm happy that it was just something that I had to watch for. And
Right.
yeah, genres are great. So like Pop Gun is it's got the fantasy element with the
A little
ghost, of
bit.
Yeah.
course, but it's still very much leaning to contemporary literary fiction, right? Like you did a really good job, by the way. I wanted to mention this, of encapsulating family life. I think Jordan touched on this at the beginning, is that like it was all the sort of interactions between the family members were very, very real and very relatable.
Mm.
Like when the parents kind of having their little bit of a tisk in the kitchen, and then the mom getting annoyed with Cal and not really listening to him while he's trying to do what he does, the sister treating him, just all the little interactions between the different family members. The relationships were so real, and I think you captured that very well in this story.
And I was immersed in my family when I was writing it. I wrote it here at my
Right.
sister's house where I'm visiting right now. I was immersed in them. And I was watching my grandparent or, my parents be impatient with my nephews and stuff and being like, hey, take one more minute with him. Oh, right. This is the relationship, and it wasn't super conscious, but spending every day and then writing at night, spending every day with them and then writing at night, it couldn't help but come out.
Yeah, of course.
Right.
I also wanted to ask, because Jordan was talking about, how he kind of looks at this as an editor, and that especially with Pop Gun, there wasn't much that could be improved upon, or that he might ask you to do or change or something to help the story reach its final form. Did you use an editor at all for this one? Like, you used an editor for your first book. Did you pay a professional editor for this one? Did you just have it read to your family and see what they said about it? How did you approach this?
All three. Yeah, I read it to my family like wild and annoyed all my friends with it. And then, yes, my editor, actually, the editor I'm working with, that I hire her to do the novels with me, she did me a solid. And she came and looked at it and did some line edit for me, and then she's the one who actually shifted the because it was third person when I went into that time crunch when they switch and Cal becomes the grandfather. It was so confusing. She's the one who helped me figure out, keep it in first person. Mm-hmm. It'll make sense. Keep it in first person. Mm-hmm. And I even wrote it a couple times in first person. I'm like, it still isn't clear. It still isn't clear. And having having someone else's perspective in it is just so wildly helpful. And she's an older lady. I'm in my early 40s. I think she's in her late 50s or something. She's the best. But her sentimentality, her kind of what she likes, where she comes from, is so wildly different from me. I get crazy frustrated with some of her notes because I'm like, no, this doesn't make sense. I don't like that. That's not what the character is. But then I'm realizing, right, she's seeing it from this other perspective. She's not seeing it from a 43-year-old dude, you know what I mean? She's seen it from an older lady's perspective who's been in the industry for a while, and she knows conventions, but she likes what I'm doing here, but maybe this could change over here, and so just like, I feel really lucky to have found an editor with such a different perspective on approach.
That's awesome.
That's excellent. Yeah.
I think that's such a big part of it too, is how, I mean, when you think of a lot of the enduring stuff, it's work that's been almost workshopped. Like there's so many theories that Shakespeare's work, for example, was really actually the product of intensive kind of workshopping and the actors having a say. And so because, you know, it contains all ages and perspectives and experiences and things like that. And I think that that's part of the workshop and process and editing's value is that thing of having all those different viewpoints and perspectives and life experiences. Oftentimes, I'll have an older editing client where I think for a moment, oh gosh, you know, what can I bring as a 30-something to this person who has way more life experience? But then again, in your 30 years, you've had experiences they've never had in their whole lifetime, kind of thing, probably. So that you realize also the you know, age is kind of relative, but also I learn all the time from my editing clients. Like they've taught me so much about story through their successes and their mistakes, or whatever you want to call it, their fumbles every now and then, which I'm grateful for as an editor on one level, because like, hey, I can help you with this and be like useful on a very basics level, the bread and butter level. But it's also like at the same time I'm learning from them in everything they do, where I'm like, you know, as an editor, I'm blown away by this kind of thing. So there's a wonderful, like, I really like that you paid kudos to your editor, because I really think that relationship is such a valuable part of process. I mean, mentor type figures and teachers, the teaching, in my experience, the best teaching, it always goes both ways. Like the best teaching experiences I've had as a student as well have been with teachers, so I felt like I've taught them something. There's like a openness to learning also from the people you work with. I think that's what coaching makes coaching great as well. Like the coaching we do in our novels, that you build real relationships with people you coach. It's not like a transactional kind of thing. It's like there obviously is a economic component, but it's like it's a real kind of mutual learning process, which is great. It's kind of similar to the therapeutic process in some ways. Like when people go to therapy, it's kind of like it's a conversation that is like mutually illuminating for both parties, kind of thing.
And depending on the style of coaching that you do and your client's needs, you can be the one that they come to for support when they're feeling really discouraged, or they're having a really tough writing day and thinking about throwing in the towel and just, you know, should I go back to my job in a tech startup because, you know, I actually make money.
Right.
It's a pass or fail environment. You know, this novel stuff is too subjective, and editors aren't liking it, or publishers aren't liking it. You as a coach are actually in that kind of therapeutic role where you have to empathize with them. You have to figure out
Empathy is crucial. Empathy, and I would say integrity as well, because so often people will look at coaching and businesses and services and think, oh, you know, you're ripping off writers. But it's like, no, a good service is investing back in the writers they're helping as much as they're being invested in. You know what I mean? It's like it's a win-win situation. I think that these are the best aspects of writing groups when they work, and also coaching relationships and things, is that kind of mutuality.
And it's too bad we're all limited by budgets. It'd be nice to have three editors for every story that you write. You know, the different age
Right.
and
that could also kill it. That could also kill voice. Yeah, that could also kill voice. I think it's important sometimes to limit the number of cooks in the kitchen. You know,
That's
sometimes
true.
Is that right?
yeah, sometimes depends on the story and the purpose and the kind of story and how many voices. You know, with a very multi-voice thing, you might decide, for example, if you've written a novel with like 4 viewpoint narrators, you might run it by different editors, because each one might bring a different thing to a different voice. Or every editor is also only one person as well. Like some people have their blind spots. I always think, oh, I probably missed this or missed that when I do a manuscript evaluation. But then I always look for that one thing, that one golden bit of nugget of advice where you think, that's what they're paying me for kind of moment. You know, where you get that one thing that makes it all worth it, that one golden bit of insight. I'm not satisfied until I found that one thing in the manuscript where I'm like, this is a really great insight that I've given them. When you know you've done your job well as an editor, it's such a great satisfaction as well. So yeah, it's
I couldn't imagine you guys, people who are like master the grammar and concept and flow of story. It just so impresses me. Like, I'm more impressed by editors than I am by novelists. No, dude. And you talk about, let me, if I can comment on this really quick. Some people might say, hey, you're ripping writers off and stuff. I paid a chunk to this editor, and blind. I didn't know how she worked yet. I didn't, and it was I had to dig a little deep to be able to do it. And then I watched the work she put in on it, on my first novel, and it was just, I was like, oh, she's working for like 12 cents an hour now, after paying her a huge chunk. And but after the work, I was like, oh, it's not even, I would pay her 3 times this if I could. I would,
Right.
I think it's amazing. I think it's just a really cool thing to collaborate with people that have a mastery. I guess we never master it, but a really good command of language and grammar. It blows me away how you guys.
It's great when writers get that.
Right,
yeah, but it's great. I mean, kudos for that, because it's great when writers get the labor involved all around. I mean, from the printing to whatever. I think it always takes a village. Like, I'm always amazed when I look at, for example, also in music, and you look at song credits and it's like 15 writers for one song. You hear this
right.
thing that's 2 minutes on the radio or whatever, or you listen to it on Spotify or whatever it may be. You don't think about each one of those writers who put on some hard graft on that thing. So it really does take, all creative process takes a village. And I think the sooner writers can realize that in their careers and the development of the craft, the better, because investing in an editor may seem like, oh gosh, like, why do I have to do this? Like, why spend this money, or why invest this much in the story? But it's like, you're investing in yourself as well. If you get a good editor who really works hard to understand what you're trying to do and helps you see how you can achieve it better, then you really are investing in your own craft. Yeah,
and it's worth paying a premium to like look over their shoulder and have them walk you through exactly why. Like, rather than just paying for a line edit to help, and then you see the notes, things like that. Like I would suggest that somebody, especially on the first time, pay more to get an over the shoulder sort of instructional walkthrough, so you actually understand why they're doing what they do and what the process is.
Yeah.
And you can learn from that, and then you'll be in a better place to apply those lessons on your next piece.
Yeah.
And I mean,
it's a dialogue too.
That might cause you to pay less for editors in the long run, because you can do a lot of the work yourself.
Because you don't make the same mistakes twice. Yeah, it's also that it's also a dialogue. I mean, when I send back a manuscript evaluation, I always stress to the client, please ask any questions, please query anything or anything you disagree with as well. But sometimes there'll be an ongoing discussion, or then you'll book a video call where you go through some of the feedback and some of the questions it raised, or the further decisions. And it's like a kind of dialogic process. It's not like a one and done sort of thing. Often you end up building these kind of long-term editorial relationships where you keep working with the same writer, and that's the best, because you get to know someone's voice and you get to be there and see the growth. But also, when they try new things, it's like it's exciting to see someone like just taking more risks or shooting bigger or whatever the case may be. It's like a great feeling to see that. I think that's when you're supposed to do what you do, is when you really feel other people's successes as your own, people you've worked with or for, whatever. It's a great feeling to like be part of that process. And that's
the best part of my job, is getting to watch the new authors become
the growth,
pro authors, win awards. Congratulations again. I did want to mention, Levi, that you just said that it blows your mind watching, people who are not masters, but really, really good at the grammar, at the flow of the story. But I think that you may not quite realize that you are getting very, very close to that level yourself, especially with Pop Gun.
And I sometimes make mistakes, like everyone's human.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So I think that you should be very proud of yourself. I mean,
thank you.
You're an award winner now. Goes on your cover letter, your query letters, yeah, I think you should be very proud, not only of winning the award, but of this story in general. Even if it hadn't won, I think this is something that you should be very pleased with the final outcome, let alone it meaning to you. But the story is very well written, and it's like, it was an emotional story that stuck with both Jordan and I. So there's a reason that it was selected as the winner.
Oh, that's so huge. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
What a pleasure.
Yeah. So I know we are a little bit over time, about that 45 minutes that I said I'd give Jordan a chance to take off. So Jordan, do you have any? Did you work through your list of questions? Do you have anything else you want to say to Levi
Yeah,
before we wrap it up here?
I think you pretty much answered everything I was gonna ask in the course of this conversation. But it's been great chatting to you both, and I'm really glad that I'm glad to hear your story, because knowing the hard work you put into your writing and how you've invested in it and so forth, it makes me more certain in the choice that I was already certain in. So it's
Awesome.
no, it's great. It's very gratifying for me to know that I chose well. So just having heard, how much work you put into your writing and how you're investing in your own writing kind of processes, it's great.
As hard as I can.
It's what
I'm
I
going as
want to
hard as
hear
I
from
can.
writers. So yeah, no, that's awesome. So yeah, kudos. And I'm looking forward to reading more of your stories and more of the editions, going back through I don't know how far your back catalog goes, Craig, on the site, but I'll check that out.
Well,
Oh, 17.
We've got 17 issues. It's about 100 and I think it's 172 stories by 146 authors. I
Awesome.
think
Okay, I'm
so.
gonna
I
have
think
to start
that's
working my way through it.
yeah. I mean, it's
Kindle
easier. You can read
no,
each
they're
issue
they're
in like
fantastic stories.
maybe
Like,
an
yeah,
hour and a half, depending on how quickly you read.
great.
But it is full of great stories. And it
Absolutely, judging
is
by this edition.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's fantastic. I'm so pleased with the way it's going, with the quality of work that we've been getting. When we opened it up,
totally.
when we made the choice to be for new writers, specifically ones that are unpublished or very early in their stages, we were kind of like, oh
Yeah,
boy, like is this going to bring the overall quality of the magazine way down? Because of course, new writers we've made the choice. We have to select from the pool of submissions that we get. We can't just be like, we're not we're not one of those magazines that's gonna select less work because it doesn't fit with our vision this submission round, right? Like this is what we do. And I think we're very fortunate. I'm very pleased to say that the level of work that we've been receiving is so gosh darn good, that I'm very pleased to be publishing. I feel very proud of the magazine, and I hear feedback from other writers that reading the magazine, they feel like it's something that they aspire to be published in because they would like to see
awesome.
their work published alongside that quality of writing. So it actually
I
would
couldn't agree more with that.
So I'm pleased with it, and my hope is as we're launching our author HQ in the next week, hopefully. The projects take a little longer, especially when you get sick. But my hope is that as that gets picked up, it picks up over the next year as we add more and more educational content to it and courses and bring in more experts to kind of give trainings to the new writers, that the quality of work submitted to the magazine will only continue to go up as
Awesome.
people get instruction. So I'm very pleased. I'm wildly excited to have you, Levi, have submitted such a great story, and I'm pleased to have published it. So we'll be
not as excited as I am.
Well, congratulations! You are an award-winning author.
Congrats. Yeah.
You're a published author. You can, I'm pretty sure this is going to qualify you for some entry to like membership at professional organizations, depending on their, the specific requirements for them. But I think that a prize like this will probably get you in a couple of places.
Oh, that's huge.
Yeah. I will actually, I should actually make a list and confirm that, because that would be good to just hand. Yeah, no, it's on you. Yes. So Jordan, thank you so much for agreeing to judge the contest. It's been so fantastic working with you. Anybody watching this video, go seek out Jordan's got a lot of advice that he writes on Now Novel for writers, and Now Novel itself is a great organization that has a lot of benefits to new writers and writers in general. So definitely go check them out.
Awesome.
So
thanks.
yeah,
Thanks
thank you so much,
Jordan. Thank you so much, Jordan. Huge. Thank you so much.
Just to ask, one thing I forgot to ask is, where can people find you on socials or subscribe to find out about future writing?
Sure. Yeah. I'm on Facebook as Levi Smith. That's kind of it. Okay. I'm on Instagram, but I haven't checked it in months. So
great, yeah. So set those pages up, because you're going to need them.
Totally.
set the Goodreads and other pages up.
Yeah,
absolutely. I will. I'm gonna set up an author page. I'm gonna get some socials going, and I'm excited.
Awesome.
Thank
Yeah.
you again, Jordan.
Cool.
Great to meet
It's
you.
a pleasure. Yeah, great to meet you. Cheers, guys.
And congratulations
Cheers.
one more time, Levi. Like, you,
Yeah,
fantastic.
congrats.
Thank you for your story. It was really great to meet you. Thank you to you both. So anybody who made it this far in the video and didn't go read Pop Gun, you should go read it right now so you understand everything that we just talked about and read the other great stories as well. So yeah, thank you everybody. Congratulations. Thank you, Jordan.
Thank you, Craig.
I hope you guys have an absolute fantastic day.
You
And I'm sure
too. Cheers, guys.
we'll keep in touch.
I will do.
Cheers.
Cheers. Bye.
All right. Bye now.